Get out of here. Get out of here now. Okay? Good morning. To God be all the glory. Happy Monday, everyone. Let's go into our Father's Prayer before I get into this conversation about this fool that's out here um, mocking our ancestors and those who made the foundation, built the foundation for us, and fought, joined the civil rights movement, joined the Black Panther movement, and joined the Nation of Islam when we, as Black Americans, were under attack by police. But I'm going to go over some history flicks with everybody, and I'm going to let you figure this whole thing out for yourself. See, a lot of you are lost in your history because your family, your parents didn't teach you this stuff. You didn't learn it in school. And of course, if you didn't go to any church, or especially to a black church, you're not going to learn black history. You're not going to learn about who you are and what your people fought and died for you. Not no white Jesus, not no Puerto Rican Jesus, not no whatever other Jesus. The black men that God has called on the divine calling. This was a divine time in history for black leaders. Okay? And their callings was assigned by God and God alone. And can't nobody else come and rewrite the history and the story of what these black leaders stood for. No, Huey Newton did not take this into a fight with including all different types of people. He did this for a reason, for security. Now, there was certain groups of people like he needed to be a part of the party because he had to use them to get information, to bring information to the Panthers. And then only certain people were able to be in there to go in, like he chose what's his name? His friend, Richard Aoki. Richard Aoki. Let me show you Richard while I'm talking to you. I'm gonna show you who Richard is, okay? Let's go. That's why I do these footage so I could have things in front of you. This guy here. This is Richard Aoki. Richard Aoki was a friend of the Black Panthers. He was a friend of Bobby Seals, and he was also a friend to Huey Newton. They met him on campus at one of they met him in college where they went to the Merritt College out there in California. Huey Newton and them, they all had an education. Let's get that right. And when they talk about, when the Black Panthers were talking about, matter of fact, Aoki trained them. Aoki was in the background, but he was training the Black Panthers how to use their firearms. He also trained them in military skills. Huey Newton was a street fighter. Okay? He learned that skill at a very young age, how to use his hands on the street. Huey wasn't a very tall guy. And he was also a biracial. Huey was also mixed. His grandfather, which was his father, was white. But his mother and his father, of course, his father was a biracial child. Let's put it that way. Huey Newton's father was a biracial child. So at the time when Huey Newton was growing up, of course, he was so light skinned that he you could tell he was mixed with something. That, of course, he was always provoked. So that's how he had to learn how to fight. And fight because his brother taught him. One of his older brothers taught him how to use his hands. And from what I understand, Huey had the fastest hands on in the game. When it came to street fights, he was bad with the hands. Okay, so let's go on. Let's go on into our Father's Prayer, because I don't think I said it before I started this conversation, because I was just a little bit, when I saw this video and I heard this fool out here talking with his little Black Panther wearing the uniform and making all of these threats on social media and saying certain things. So a lot of people need to be educated about who the Black Panthers were. They were not they were non-violent, but they did make a stand with the guns that they held in their hands, and they said out of their hands, if we would have known, we would have never had the guns, out open in the public like that. They had to learn as they went along. That's why they had the guns the way they were protecting their community, how they were protecting the women, the children, the community, point blank, period. But they were doing more than just that. The Black Panthers wasn't just only out there marching and waving guns and making violent threats to the police or whatever. Only time the Black Panthers made any kind of statement is when they just let them know we're going to defend ourselves. Okay? They couldn't march like Martin. They just couldn't do it. And some just was at that time the way God had planned it. He had Martin be the voice. The next person behind him was Malcolm X. With his training of how he talked about military skills, learning military skills, protection, your dignity, and everything else. And so was the Black Panthers was following Martin, and they were following Malcolm X. Huey Newton even said it himself. He says, we were listening to Malcolm, but we wasn't doing all the religious stuff. Okay? They was the bodyguards for his Malcolm's widow, which was Shabazz. Betty Shabazz, they became her security. They were her security. The Black Panthers. They was protecting Martin's wife and his family. Malcolm's wife and his family when Malcolm passed away. They did everything that they needed to do in order for them to do things the right way. They went through legal paths, okay? They went to places to get the things they needed to get done. When they were open and carrying, that became a problem, so they changed the law. They was not allowed to open and carry anymore. So that's what they had to do. But it wasn't them. It was the policemen that was harassing the Black Panthers, setting them up, framing them, making it look like they brought the drugs, guns, everything else. There was so many more that had lost their life. They had infiltrators in the group. They had people, of course, they had a COINTELPRO. They put men inside the Black Panther like they do every organization so that they can find out who their leaders are and what they're about to do and the moves they making. And that's how they were able to stay on top of them and what they were doing to take down the Black Panther, because it was J. Edgar Hoover, the racist bigot that was running the FBI, that put a target on the Black Panthers. And they still around. The real ones, the older ones, they've been doing some kind of they did documentary and things. Most of them are dead, but there's a whole lot more that was there. They were national. Yes, as time went on, yes, there were other people who joined the Black Panthers. There were white people in it as well. But they weren't about what this fool is telling you out here on these videos. They were not violent. They was against violence. They was against Vietnam. They was against, and as soon as you saying you against something with wars and everything else like that, you are communist, you are socialist, you are Marxist and all this other stuff. No, you're not. You a child of God. That's who you are. But the enemy is going to tell you that you are they are communists, they are Marxists, they want to feed you with all this negative garbage to doctrinate your mind to think that way, but that's not truly what it is. We're going to go over some video, but I wanted to show you Richard Aoki. Our Father who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name, thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Lord, give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespass as we forgive those who have trespassed against us. Lord, lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thy is the kingdom, power, and also all the glory forever and ever. Amen. Whew, I forgot to say our prayer. I was getting all worked up. But this is really, really disturbing to Black history. We ain't going to have no Puerto Rican, some street gang member to come out and put this kind of image out there about the Black Panthers. No, we not going up against ICE, because if the Black Panthers, if Huey Newton was here, he would tell you not to do that. He has stopped his men many a times against violence with the police. He says the only time we fight them is when they come for us. That's it. We don't go after them. We don't go looking for them. We don't go out there trying to fight for the life of a white woman. Because no, Huey would have definitely not been about all of that. A white woman who was in some place where she was not supposed to be and allowed herself to become a victim. Okay? That is not what Huey would have been about. That's not what Malcolm would have been about. And that's damn sure not what Dr. King would have been about. He would have probably said he would have been sad about her death, but he would have never say it's all right to go out there with an arm yourself and go hunt down some ICE agents and kill them. That is not what the Black Panthers was about. And this fool right there that's on there saying all of this stuff, that organization, the family members of that organization need to come together and sue that fool. Because this is destroying the real true Black Panthers. Black Panthers are not who that fool in Philadelphia say they were. Okay, let's get that together. This history was taught to me in my home. This wasn't given to me by the world. It was taught to me from my elders, from my family that taught me about these leaders in my life. Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, and the Black Panthers. This is what we grew up and learned as children in the growing up in the world that we had to grow up and live in. And our history was taught to us from home, not from the streets, not from this gang member or from whatever. He's Cohen 12 Pro, okay? He's somebody that they set in the group to infiltrate, to try to usher Black people out there. Our fight is over. That's what they don't seem to understand. The civil rights fight is over. We already finished that fight. It's been after the death of Dr. Martin Luther King and Malcolm X and some of these Black Panther members, we already overcome. Right now, all we got to do now is just follow the law. And if it's anything that shouldn't be, we're going to ask God to help us fix it. We don't just go out there just shooting off with our mouth and just start marching and getting ourselves gunned down and killed for nothing. You got to know what it's about, and it got to be something that you really need in order to be out there. And right now, we don't have a need to be out there at all. Not for what they're doing. Not with those groups of people. That is not our fight. And don't include our heroes in this mess either. That ain't got nothing to do with Black America. It's stolen parts of our history that they trying to redo. That is over. That book is sealed. That story of the life of the Black Panthers, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X can't be no other. Because anytime you try it, God gonna knock it down, because this is coming from divine. That was a divine assignment. Because it was a need back then for Black people. We were being harassed. We were being killed. We were being starved. We were being living in harsh, inhumane conditions in housing. We weren't being properly getting the proper medical care that we needed. The Black Panthers fought for that. Everything the Black Panthers did, they did it for a cause, not for stupidity. They don't go out in the street waving guns and making threats to federal agents. No Black Panther would have been bold enough to do that. Yes, Huey stood with his gun, his arms, but he was making a statement about how they was unarming them and hurting, harming them, but they wanted to defend themselves, self-defense. And it all starts with some kind of moral discipline. It's a discipline. We will not make it seem that these men died in vain. They died in a fight for their people, and they laid down for the people, and that's what they were about. Not for the white girl who was stupid to be in a doggone ICE operation and with her vehicle and hit a police officer. Even if she came anywhere near one, they had every right to feel threatened. That's just the way it is. Because they making threats. How you going to make any progress from that? The Black Panthers wasn't doing that. They wasn't putting no graffiti on the walls and saying things that they gonna kill they gonna murder ICE agents or kill the police and all that. They did chants. They said, yeah, no more guns. When they locked up Huey, yeah, he had a large group of followers. They was out there. They was protesting. They were singing songs that may sound like it was a threat. Like guns, the revolution is coming. Most of their songs stood for that moment of what they were dealing with police brutality. They will kill any child. That's why they even had to include young street boys, young boys from what you call it, to discipline them, give them that moral instruction, and then try to help them and bring them up and everything, because they needed to learn how to defend themselves, and they needed to learn who they were. They were. They need to know how much they was worth. Their life meant something. Their life meant purpose. Okay? They were not like this fool out here, y'all. Don't let your sons go out there and follow this fool. And if they do, and if you just want to be right, hey, you feel protected by somebody like that, then you go right on ahead and do it. But I wouldn't allow my son, my nephew, or any male child in my family to follow somebody that's going to lead them to a grave that is going to be worthless. They're going to end their life for nothing. Nothing that has any substance. Nothing that have any meaning. These people laid their life down because it was something they had meaning for. There's a difference. Now, hey, Richard Ayoki, sad the way he died. He went into some kind of isolation because he did more than just the Black Panther. He worked for the Liberation Party because he was always about planning protests and events. He was a Japanese child that grew up in poverty, you can say in poverty or whatever, but he also, but what they don't understand is that Huey did go to Algeria and he took some pictures with some armed palace, some people from all these other places, because Huey did travel internationally. But like I'm saying about Richard Aoki, he did die in isolation. He did commit suicide. They said it was suicide. I don't think it was suicide. I think they caught up with him and they killed him, and they make it sound like it was suicide. But Richard Aoki, they try to say he was working as a plant in the organization, but he wasn't. That wasn't never. That's still disputable. A lot of people that lived said he wasn't that person, and knowing from his culture and the things that are more known about Japanese and people from that kind of culture in that part of the world, they don't believe in they was involved in something, in snitching. From my understanding, as you study Japanese culture and you study Japanese um, ways that they are and they are taught, they're not the type of person. If they got involved with this organization, the Black Panthers, it was something that they felt was meaningful. They don't just jump in anybody's protest. That's one thing about the Asian people. They ain't gonna just go out there and be stupid. Like maybe the stupid ones today might do it. The younger the generation today might do it because they so disrespectful. They don't learn nothing about their history. They just want to go follow the crowd and just be out there just being stupid. But these back then and everything, Japanese children, Chinese children, whatever, if they was part of this organization with black people, it was something meaningful. They don't just jump in anybody protest. This is what make it special. And same thing that happened with the Martin Luther King Statue of Hope, the monument that was sculptured by the sculpture. I keep forgetting. I don't know how to pronounce his name. The Chinese sculpture, the master. He was a master. And this guy here, this Japanese man, Richard Aoki, was also the best organizing protester that ever lived during that time. Yes. He was one of the best organized protesters. That's why the Black Panthers was able to go as far as they did internationally and to get the guns and to get the money and everything else so that they can move they move their movement ahead, because they had people that was the master at it working for them. So they wasn't like these fools. That man right there, he would have never made it with the Black Panthers. They would never even brought him in the group, because you had to have a special discipline. And one of the things you needed to know is that you don't tell on your brother. You don't snitch, you don't tell, you don't do none of that stuff. That's one thing about the organization that they were very strict about, because they had to deal with security. Huey Newton made that very clear. That's why at the end, when he started getting paranoid and he started getting crazy, and he started, but like I tell everybody, after that movement, after these men did what they had to do, they were ready to die. They were just ready to die. I'm talking about the ones like Huey, the faces, um, because Huey, out of all of them, because he was the leader, he took the most. Only if you only read his story, you could go to his book. You could read his story. His book is out there. He wrote his own book. He wrote his story. So anything you want to learn about Huey, you could go read about it. Okay, he told his own story. Don't listen to nobody else telling his story, rewriting his story. And I'm just going by what I already, learned from my childhood growing up, and some of the things that I was able to discover as I got older about the Black Panthers. Yes, we used to walk around, power to the people, you know, all that love and that togetherness and everything. Black people were really strong and united back then. Today they so broken, so displaced, so I don't know, all over the place now. But we was strong, strong, strong in the 60s. You wouldn't see a person go around in the street, even if he was a junkie. He was invited in somebody's house for a meal. Good Times demonstrated that when they brought the alcohol, it cleaned him up and washed him up and everything. We took in people. We took care of our friends, our neighbors, our friends, people, kids, and everything. Everybody became a part of the village and everything. That's how it was. Until we start letting other things creep on in into our culture, and that's when things started to fall apart. That's why these young black people today are like, they not having it. We are delineating. We don't care where you come from. You ain't from here. You didn't grow up in our culture, whatever. We don't want to be messed with you, because this is what breaks down the. This is what harms the strength in your community, when you start bringing all these different ideologies, all these different kinds of people that never really had the true living experience of that what you had, and they come into your around your people and everything, and then all of a sudden you can't you become divided and you start breaking down. And that's exactly what happened to black people. And that's what they had wanted to do. That was the tactic. Break them down, turn them against each other. This is how we destroy this group. They said COINTELPRO was sending notes to Huey Newton that this is what Eldridge Cleaver said, and then they were sending things to Eldridge Cleaver saying this is what Huey Newton said. They were sending little notes and stuff to set it up so that they could break down the group. The same way they got the COINTEL got inside of everything. They got inside of Martin Luther King. They got inside Martin Luther King. Okay, in that time, anytime you was a powerful public figure, oh, they were watching you. And they've been doing it. They did it to Christ. In the Bible, Christ taught you that already. They did the same to him. Where he at, what he's doing, what he's saying, what he's doing. They were following him. They were trying to get information about him, where he's at, where he's moving, how he's doing this, how he's doing that. Yeah, that's how they sent Judas. That's how they do it. But these people were not violent people. They made the image look violent, but they weren't violent. They had a cause. And they died for one that was good. Not something that was wicked and evil like Renee Good and now this Alex Prett guy. Pretty. Let me show you some clippings of them. Let me show you. This is the fake. This is what we don't follow. Okay? We don't follow this. This is not Black Panthers. This is something that the government probably set up this group. This is not the Black Panthers. Be careful. Be careful. That's all I'm saying. These are the Black Panthers, y'all. Yep, his niece is calling him out. Good. I hope she win. I hope the whole family get together. If they know what self defense was not going around waving weapons and making life threats, making these violent threats to is making these violent threats. Then you got to understand, join the Black Panther, there was other groups that was in there. It was the Black Liberations, and it was also the Pan African Black Liberation. They turned into like a group called like Pan Africans. Okay, that's another thing you got to understand about the Black Panthers. That's another group you have to understand about the Black Panthers. Let me find some things on the Black Panthers so I could show you for documentary. Huey. Oh, I know what I can do. I know just what I can do. Let me go back here. Oh, God. I don't know what I did with that video. His hands up! Ain't no law being broken. That's right. Now, this is Little Barbie, y'all. You ain't got to go. This is supposed to be Barbie Sales. This is the movie. And, of course, the movie is not going... The movie is not going to go as detailed as the book, okay? What they really was about. Let's say black. I'm going to just do a document. He was not. He wanted this thing to go on, like get black people out there to kill. See, people like this, J. Edgar Hoover, people like that should never work in a high office like as such, especially an FBI. He was wicked. He was just targeting them because they were black. He hated black people, and that was that's what he was. That's exactly what he was doing. He hated black people. He didn't do it because they were being violent and they were really harming police officers, but he had to make it that way because he hated black people. He didn't want to see black people become nothing more than just servants. That's how his mindset was. And anybody that has that type of mindset is not good people over human life. They are just not good people over human life because God does not show favoritism. He's a no favoritism person. And anybody got a heart that they got a hate for a certain group of people, no matter who they are, is not a good leader for anybody. They're not worthy to anybody with that type of ignorance. And J. Edgar Hoover was ignorant and he was evil and he was wicked. Oh, that man ain't up in no heaven. And his name didn't go down as a good name. His name went down as an evil name because of the things he caused to harm to those lives of black people. Sitting in the position he was as an FBI director, whatever he was. And he was setting up these people's lives and harming black lives with his racist mindset. Any racist today, you don't have an excuse to be a racist. Nobody should have any. Eugene Bull Corner, another one, another evil bastard that was also wicked. He hit children, dogs, he bought a hose and did all kind of stuff. He was the most wickedest. These white people that did this evil while they lived on this earth, they did not go down with a good name. They went down with an evil name and they burning in hell for what they did. Ain't nobody going to remember them as good. Not even their own family's going to want to remember them as anything. Don't even want to be attached to them because of the inhumane stuff that they did while they lived. They didn't work for God. They worked for the devil. So we're gonna go over a little bit of this clip and then
I know people will ask me, well, are you bitter that you spent 19 years in prison? And I think bitterness would be an inappropriate word. I have mixed feelings about it, but it was something that came as a consequence of taking a position and taking positions as a black man in a racist society. And I had to accept that.
framing the Panthers.
He'd been Wahad, formerly Dharuba Moore, and I've been in prison 19 years. Knowing that I was innocent of the charges that I was convicted of, I've always maintained that the only reason that I was indicted um, for the attempt murder of two policemen was because of my active role in the Black Panther Party in New York, because of my vocal opposition to the criminal justice system in New York.
By mid-1968, the Black Panther Party became COINTELPRO's chief target. And according to this document from December of 1968, all FBI field offices were instructed to submit hard-hitting.
Do you expect any racist white man who has done really a lot of harm as a KKK member who went and burned down black churches, hung black men, killed black children and women, raped black women, these people that committed these kind of terrorist crimes? Do you expect them to be in a position to sit down and keep a file about saying anything nice about you? Even if you out there doing a good cause, that they're going to sit down and speak nicely about you and leave documents of things that is true. That's why black people got to figure it out for themselves. You living in it right now. You know how they are. Maybe they not as cruel to you the way they were in the 60s to our ancestors, but you know how they are. They ain't going to never say nothing nice about your history because they want to continue to stay sorry, they want to continue to keep that image of white supremacy. You got to understand, they're not going to want to give up that image of white supremacy. They want to make sure that you always look bad and evil and they always clean and good. So these documents don't mean nothing because it's not written in the book of life. It's in the Bible. If you follow Christ, you good. And that's exactly what Dr. King did. That's what a lot of them did in their own way. They followed Christ because Christ had some people like Peter out there, like Huey was. Huey is a Peter. He could not, okay, do the march. And then just some of us can't do that. And some of us were called to do it. So you can't knock it for what it was. At that time, every movement was needed. But now we don't have a need out to be out there. If anybody, we need to go after the music industry, but that's another story. In the entertainment, the entertainment after Hollywood and after the music industry, that's the only two places we haven't conquered at yet. in America. We already went through Congress and we voted in out they first. They was able to even get their first black mayor. The Black Panthers. They was able to get brothers on the police force. The Black Panthers. They did a lot of things. It was just came that time where Huey Newton knew he was tired. He done accomplished everything he needed to accomplish in the United States of America because that's where the fight was. It wasn't international. People internationally came to help the cause, but the fight was in the United States of America against the enemy of our government. How they wanted to kill us, destroy us. Even they was going to try to start, just like what's going on now in Minnesota. Take away all their federal funds, let them stay out there and just shoot them all up, kill them out. They come after you. It was going on like that. But see, this wouldn't have to happen in Minnesota because there's no need for it to happen in Minnesota. It's the governor over there and it's the mayor over there and what they're doing over there and the chief of police and all of them. That whole corruption over there and that whole everybody that sits in government over there is corrupt. Because there's no way that this protest should have continued to go on and there was no insurrection act invoked just to keep the thing, to get the people out of the way, get them out of the, keep them out of the, streets or whatever, protesting or whatever. But they haven't done that yet. Because they ain't got no black bodies out there on the ground. That's what it is. That's what they waiting. They waiting. They want to see some black people out there so that they can have a reason to bring the insurrection around. History speaks for itself, y'all.
Counterintelligence measures aimed at crippling the Black Panther Party.
One doesn't understand how young the average member of the Black Panther Party was in a lot of ways. They were very, very young. And I was like an old man practically at 23, man, I got caught up in struggle in that way.
Black Panther Party, they recruited a lot of young men that was getting recruited. Some of them went into the military, they came out, and then they joined the Black Panther Party. You know what I'm saying? That's what happened. A lot. They wasn't all no street gang. Now, there was some street boys that from the hood that got into the black, to keep them positive, keep them giving them something to do or whatever to make them feel like they were useful in a positive way instead of a negative way. They was trying to keep the drugs out of the neighborhood until the FBI and everything set drugs up, started setting up drugs and everything in certain places to take down, to get the people, to start becoming addicts and stay in, their addictions that will keep them not woke about what's going on around them. They wanted to neutralize them, okay? That's how they neutralize them, and they still do it to this day. They'll neutralize you. They put the drugs and everything in the community. And they set up people to push the drugs around, to take down the community. But these people didn't understand how they could use your own people to harm you. That's why Huey Newton became very, very, very paranoid at the end. And he just was not trusting anybody until he went to his grave. He was killed by supposedly a drug dealer because he got on drugs real bad, cocaine, alcohol, or whatever. And that happens at the end of some people. It doesn't always end well. In the end, after you don't had to complete a mission. That's with anybody. But with that being said, you all have a blessed and wonderful Monday. I'll probably come back with you later. But I just wanted to just go over some things about who was our heroes and they fighting our battles from heaven. We don't need to be out there unless it's a real need. And the only fight we got now for Black America is the music industry and Hollywood. The things that they've been doing wickedly to black women and to black men. Okay? So that's our next break in.